Sorry.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We're learning today Parshas Vayeitzei, which is the Torah portion about Jacob's astonishing success. How does Jacob rise to meteoric success? He goes to, he leaves his father's house, his mother's house, is running away from Esau's trying to kill him. We're on page 175. He's leaving. He has the possessions that he has with him are robbed from him by Esau's son Eliphaz, and he now is empty-handed, crossing Jordan, heading over to Iraq, where he is going to be destined to meet his 4 wives and have his 11 children, ultimately 12 children, and he's going to become exceedingly wealthy. The portions of, in the third aliyah is when he works. He meets his wife and he works for his father-in-law for 7 years. He then marries the 2 wives and he starts having kids in the third and the fourth and the 5th aliyah. But then in the 6th aliyah, we're doing a fly through. I think it's the 5th aliyah is when he makes extraordinary success. He becomes exceedingly wealthy. That's in the 5th aliyah, and until the end of the portion where he heads back home. So the question is, what was the secret of his success? How did Jacob experience such a meteoric rise to success? And what's the lesson that we can learn and apply in our own lives as well? So the Rebbe points out that there's a very, very interesting idea over here, because here, I just want to show you in the next portion. In the next portion, turn to page 203. Here, page 205, actually. On page 205, as he's preparing to meet Esau, his nemesis. Here's what happens on page 205. He's making a prayer to God. He says, I'm just going to read the bold print. Jacob said, God of my forebear Abraham and God of my father Isaac, you said to me, return to your land and to your birthplace, and I will make things go well with you. I'm no longer worthy, due to the acts of kindness and trustworthiness that you've already done for your servant. I crossed this river Jordan with nothing but my staff, and now I've become the head of 2 camps, a large family, and great wealth that I've amassed. So he acknowledges that he came with nothing. He came broke, empty-handed, just my staff. I crossed the river Jordan. And now I've got all these wives, all these children, all this great wealth. He says, God, I no longer am worthy. He says these beautiful words, Katointi, Mikol hachasodim u'mikol ha'emes. I am no longer worthy. I'm no longer worthy due to all the acts of kindness and trustworthiness that you have done for me, your servant. You know, how often does it happen that people come in and they feel entitled? Jacob is the opposite. He's like, I don't deserve this.
The paradigm of humility.
Right. It's a paradigm of humility, but it also holds the key to understanding humility, understanding the secret to success. See, the minute that you come in with entitlement, you're saying to God, I give you what I deserve. Okay. You want to get what you deserve? It's not going to be pretty. Right? But if you come in with the opposite attitude and you say, listen, God, I don't deserve. I don't. And I'm counting on your benevolence. Now, there's no limitation on that blessing. Right? So first and foremost, there was an attitude of humility, which is critical in securing the blessing. When we come in with arrogance, right, and entitlement, that is a blockage of the blessing. But beyond that, there was something even more at play here. And that is that Jacob comes to a place where he has no friends. I mean, he has wives, that's helpful. But he has no friends. His father-in-law is a thief and a liar. He has no support of any kind, and he has to fight his way through. Yet here specifically is where he manages to succeed. And the Rebbe points out that the reason for his success was his bitachon, his trust in God. His bitachon, trust. His blind trust in God. Where do we see his blind trust in God? So we know that the opposite of trust is fear, right? is anxiety. And we've learned in the gate of trust that where there is fear, there is no room for trust. Tracht gut wird sein gut means think good and it will be good. Think good and it will be good, not because I deserve it, but let's just remember that mechanism. Think good and it will be good, which is the directive that the Rebbe's taught us as to how to apply bitachon. It means like this: think good. It originates in the story that the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe, was approached by one of his Hasidim who had a problem. His son was about to be forcibly conscripted into the army, which was akin to a death sentence in those days in Russia. So the Rebbe said to him, the Tzemach Tzedek said to him, "Tracht gut, that's good. Think good, and it will be good." And the way that the Rebbe explained that was: think good, trust blindly in God's blessing. Trust blindly in God's blessing without calculating if God is big enough to solve your problem. And that will cause a chain reaction, an equal and opposite reaction of vet sein gut, of it will be good, of a blind blessing without God calculating if you're deserving of it or not. When you trust blindly in God's ability without question, then God grants you your request without question, blindly. Blind trust begets blind blessing. Now, that's what we want. We want the blind blessing because we don't want the eyes open blessing, because if we start looking at what I deserve, it's not good. Right? So when we are able to exhibit blind trust with zero fear and anxiety, that's when we unleash the flow of that blessing. Right? Now, I want to show you how he did that in the beginning of the portion. So let's take a look on page 175. So Jacob left Beersheba and he went to Haran. He now comes to the place, to Mount Moriah. He came upon a place. He spent the night before because he spent the night there because the sun had set. He took some stones to that place and he placed them around his head and lay down in that place. He had a dream. He beheld a ladder standing firmly on the ground, its top reaching up towards heaven. The angels of God were ascending to it and were descending it. And behold, God was standing over him. He said, "I am God, God of Abraham, your forebear, and God of Isaac. I will give you the land upon which you are lying, to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. And you will spread out powerfully to the west, to the east, to the north, and to the south. And all the families on earth will be blessed through you and through your descendants. Behold, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. For I will not neglect you until I have fulfilled what I've promised Abraham concerning you." 177. That's quite a dream, hey? Jacob woke from his sleep and said, "God is truly present in this place. And I was not aware of it." I want to stop here a moment. My understanding is that Jacob was the very first person to have bitachon, to have trust. Jacob was the one that opened the gates of trust.
But didn't Abraham have
No.
trust with the binding?
No.
Trust with Hashem?
Okay, so Abraham exhibited faith.
True. That's true.
He didn't think that Isaac was going to survive. He was disappointed when the angel said to leave go. And he said, "Really?" In the binding of Isaac. He was like, "Can I at least take some blood out?" That's what he said.
So
Right?
what about Isaac? What, did he have trust or did he have faith?
So the way that I've explained it is like this, is that Abraham, let's learn from the outcome, how much trust they had. Abraham had two sons. One of them didn't turn out well, Ishmael. Yitzchak had two sons. One of them didn't turn out well, Esau. Yaakov has 12 sons. Every one of them turns out well. Why? Because he had trust. Implying that Abraham and Isaac did not. Why did Abraham and Isaac not have trust? Because they didn't have, it wasn't invented yet. Abraham was the one that invented faith. That was a big step, emunah. And Isaac manifested that faith. But Jacob took it to a whole new level. You see, Abraham and Isaac's, each one of the forefathers were responsible for one of the three prayers, the three daily prayers. Abraham commissioned Shachris, the morning service, Yitzchak Mincha, and Yaakov did Ma'ariv, right? Which means Abraham and Isaac served God in the daytime, morning and afternoon services. But Jacob was the one that served God in the nighttime, that figured out how to have trust even when things are not good. Right?
Yeah.
See where I'm going with this?
Well, that's why I'm struggling with sentences 20 through 22, because that to me is mind-boggling. absence of trust. It's
Okay, so let's get there. Let's get there. So let's get there in a moment. So the first thing I want to say is that I want to give Jacob a little bit of slack here, because it's a little difficult to understand him. And when he meets Esau, next portion, it says that he was afraid. Let's go back there for a moment. I'm just jumping around. I hope you don't mind. So on page 203, the beginning of next week's Torah portion, here on verse number 8 on page 203, it says Jacob was very frightened over the prospect that he might be killed, and distressed over the prospect that he might have to kill others. So the fact that he was very frightened tells us that Jacob there did not have trust. My understanding of that is, how could it be that Jacob didn't have trust? Because he's in the middle of inventing it. That's my understanding. This is an original answer of my own, okay? My understanding was, the Rebbe speaks flippantly about both Moses and Jacob not having had proper trust. Remember, Moses didn't have trust when he was fearful of Pharaoh finding out about the killing, right? So the Rebbe sort of like shrugs it off and says, okay, Jacob and Moses didn't have trust. My understanding of that is that in this portion right here is where Jacob invents trust through this latter dream, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I want to give him a little slack, because he had no precedent to fall on. He had no one else to fall on, and maybe that might be the answer to your question, Andy. Let's get to that in a moment.
I can give him some slack since this happened much later on page 203, but immediately after the
right. So let's figure it out. Let's go further in the verse now, page 177. So that's an incredible revelation where God says to him, "I'm with you. I'll protect you wherever you go. I'll bring you back to this land, for I will not neglect you until you have fulfilled what I promised concerning you."
Dream.
That was only the dream. That's a very intense revelation, which, according to my understanding, is the premise of trust, right? Of bitachon. So Jacob awoke from his sleep on page 177. I'm only reading the boldface. God is true, and he said, God is truly present in this place, yet I was not aware of it. I think that's the template of trust. Trust means that even though it doesn't look like it, you got to be able to remember that God is present in this place, right? That's bitachon. Bitachon means that I know that in this illness, in this crisis, in this problem that I'm in this war, even though I see no way out of it, I know that God is present even though I was not aware of it. So it's this toggle between consciousness and unconsciousness. It's a toggle. Now I'm conscious, but a moment ago I wasn't conscious, and I might slip back into unconsciousness. There's this oscillating motion. He became afraid. And he said, how awesome is this place? Now, this fear was a different kind of fear. This is not a fear from, it's an awe, right? He became afraid and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. It's not a fear, that's a positive awe. And this is the gateway to heaven. Jacob arose early in the morning and he took the stone that he placed. By the way, what does it mean gateway to heaven? So my understanding of this is the gateway to heaven is, my understanding is that this is not geographic. This is psychological. You want to open up the floodgates of blessing? This is it. You got to fall back in Jacob's ladder. If you want to open the floodgates of blessing to your war, your illness, your crisis, this is what you have to do. You got to remember that God is here even though I wasn't aware of it. You got to remember these words. This is none other than the house of God. What is the house of God? Trust, bitachon is the house of God. This world is the house of God. And what is the gateway to heaven? Trust. That's how you open the floodgates. In other words, as long as I'm unconscious, the gate is blocked. But the moment I rise to awareness, that's when the floodgates of blessing are open. That is the portal to heaven. Isn't that amazing? So let's see what happens now. Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had placed under his head and he set it up as a monument. He poured oil on top of it. Why would he have to set up a monument? Maybe because he wanted to remember this moment.
This location.
Yeah, but I'm saying not just the geographic location. I think you might want to remember the psychological state of being.
But God was not just there. God was all.
Right, so maybe he needed a monument to remind him something, to remind him. What's a monument? Memory. It's a visual reminder. He named that place Bethel, house of God. Although the original name of the town was Luz, I have no idea what that means. Seriously, I've never understood what that means. Why we needed to know the original name of the town.
Well, I can tell you that the first solar company done from Israel was called Luz for the exact.
Well, luz means light in Spanish, right? Jacob made a vow. Now, this is where things get a little interesting. Now, Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and will protect me on this journey that I am undertaking, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and I turn to my father's house untainted, and if God will be my God, then this stone that I've set up as a monument will become a house of God, and I will set aside for you a tenth of everything that you give me. So now, this is an interesting position that he's into right now, because Jacob starts saying, is this a condition? If God will be with me? Because trust is unconditional. Trust is unconditional. It's like, I know it's going to be good. It's not if it's going to be good, then I'll be okay. It's I will be okay. I know I have blind trust that I'm going to be okay. So what exactly is he saying, if God will be with me? Is he testing God?
Yeah, it's a few ifs in there.
The if is not total but
I wonder if the way to read this is since instead of if.
Since would be a whole different paradigm than if.
That's my way of understanding this. I don't know how else to understand this reading.
That kind of changes.
Unless there's another way to read it. Let's take it this way. How about we interpret it this way? Let's connect the dots. So when he meets Esau 36 years later, he's afraid.
Mhm.
Right now, he's also exhibiting exhibiting conditional. Let's call it conditional trust in God. Let's call it, which is not bitachon, right?
Mhm.
Maybe God had opened the floodgates of the portal to the blessing of Hashem. God had shown him how to do it, but he needed to watch it at play, because he didn't know yet how it worked. He didn't know yet the Tracht Gut Verzeihen good mechanism. He didn't realize that we initiate. Maybe he thought that it's got to be initiated from above. Maybe that was his understanding. And that's why when he meets Esau, he's like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. And it was only as a result of the story.
The next dream.
What was the next dream?
Where he's fighting an angel.
Well, I don't know if it's specifically that dream.
Or
But when we see the outcome, okay, let's look at the outcome. Let's look at the next verse now, verse 1. Light of foot, and that's critical. Light of foot, Jacob set out for the land of the people of the east. He heads out to this unknown, hazardous territory, lightfoot. Why would somebody be light-footed?
Quick, running.
Why would he do that?
Happy.
He's happy. And that's the key word here. Rashi tells us that the meaning of light foot is that since he was assured of God's promise, his heart carried his feet, and he became light-footed, and that's the explanation of Bereshit Rabbah. My understanding is like this, is that Jacob now employs the emotion of the promise that he'll return successfully from this land. So therefore he ventures out full of confidence and joy. No fear, right? And there he comes back with the most astronomical success. He comes back from there with the family that he built and the wealth that he amassed. So when in retrospect, when we study Jacob, we say, okay, so when he was confident in Hashem's blessing, that's when he succeeded with great success.
Mm-hmm.
When he was fearful, he wasn't so successful. And that's when we learn that how do we interpret, how do we apply the dream of Jacob's ladder by human initiation. There's ways to read this dream. This dream needs to be deeper understood on a far deeper level. Mm-hmm. Remember, the ladder was firmly on the ground and with its top reaching up to the heavens. I wonder if there's significance to the fact that the ladder, the Torah tells us, started firmly on the ground and reached up to the heavens, just like a ladder. What's a ladder? Where do you start with a ladder? Top or bottom? Where do you start? Bottom. It's initiated from below. Maybe the significance of... Let me ask you another question. Why do angels need a ladder? Why would angels need a ladder?
Because they're fixed in certain places. They can't move higher.
Then why do they need any progress? Why couldn't they have had an escalator? Right?
It wasn't invented yet.
Maybe it was an escalator. But what? I mean, let's go in the simple interpretation. If angel have wings, according to Isaiah, right? Then why do they need a ladder? Birds? You ever saw birds on a ladder? They don't need ladders. They fly. My understanding is like this. A ladder is something which is rooted from below, and from below, you position it towards the above. And that is the code that Hashem was telling Jacob about how to manifest this portal to heaven, this gateway to heaven. You have to start from below. The initiation has to be yours. You have to trust in God, and then the blessing flows from above. The blind trust from below is what initiates the blind blessing from above. This is how I read this section. I've grappled with this many years, but I think this is the clearest way that I can explain it. I'm open to any challenge if you want to give me any, but I would say I've always struggled to understand why there was a ladder in this image, but I think I just cracked that code right now. And Jacob, so when we look at Jacob in retrospect, we see, look, when he was light-footed, he was successful. When he was fearful, he wasn't so successful. And therefore, hindsight is 20/20 vision. We look back and study Jacob. It's easy for us, on Monday morning quarterbacks to study what happened. When we look back, we say, oh, okay, now we get it. It's initiated from below, not from above. He thought initially it's initiated from above. If God will do this for me, then I will react. He failed to understand the message of the ladder. He thought the ladder started from above and then descended down to below. What he didn't realize is that the ladder begins from below. Right? And therefore, the power is in our hands to open up the gateways to heaven. How do we do that? When you make a choice to trust in...
And you start climbing the ladder.
When you start climbing the ladder, you got to take the first step.
He never really climbed the ladder in the dream.
No. But it's metaphoric. It's metaphoric. Right, let me just see the comments over here. Somebody said something about Firenze from Florence. Fran is in Florence. Good. Perhaps the ladder represents the two directions of Ishtalshalus. Ishtalshalus is actually... okay, fine. That's okay. Good. So I'm going to end it with that, folks. This is really the template for Gates of Trust. It's a template for Bitachon. Jacob is the trailblazing leader. That's why he's our patriarch. He opened the floodgates to this incredible mechanism. Let's employ it and succeed beyond our wildest dreams and expectations. Thank you very much.